Is anti-aging real? And if so, should you be doing it? Welcome, friends. It's time to elevate and thrive. It's your host, Bering. If you're here, it's my amazing and talented and incredibly gifted co-host, Dr. Angela
Back at you, Barry.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Look at this love fest. So today we're talking anti-aging, and it's one of those things that I think when you bring it up, depending on who you're talking to, some people think quackery or scam or it's not real or it's impossible or it's too good to be true. Yes. And we're here to kind of clear some of those myths up a little bit today.
Absolutely. Yeah. I heard something recently, somebody saying, you are going to, you're not going to stop aging. And that is absolutely true. I mean, there's no way, of course. I mean, that would be $1 billion.
That's the fountain of youth,
that's
Yeah, exactly. And that's not what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think you have to differentiate between the realities of, at this point, we haven't cracked the code on stopping the aging process.
Not that I know of. It probably hasn't been shared with me, but I will let everybody know if I find that for sure.
I do wonder why we don't try and figure that out more aggressively.
I think there's actually a lot of research going into
there is, I know,
yeah. Because I think that's probably, mortality is it's on every single person's mind, right?
Totally. It is. And I was super bummed when Paul Allen died.
Yeah.
Because I thought, if Paul Allen can die, there's no hope for me. I'm definitely going to die. I was like, he's so much richer. He has all, his infinite resources.
Yes.
And if there's not a way to stop death for him, there's not a way to stop death for anybody.
Oh, man. There's a really great story. It's actually on Joe Rogan. It's a medical director of a stem cell clinic in Panama. U.S.-based MD. Now, this is getting a little bit away from, they use a lot of the stuff that we are going to talk about today.
This is more fringe.
This is a little bit, stem cell, I think a lot of people might associate stem cell with anti-aging. And there's an interesting story from Mel Gibson. His father was dying. Essentially, he took him to Mayo Clinic and said, everything's failing, kidneys, heart, everything is basically failing. You just get ready to say goodbye. This is natural. So he took him to this clinic and did all the therapies, had IV stem cells, had all the stuff. Kidneys bounced back, liver bounced back, heart bounced back. And he, at that time of the recording, had lived 10 more years. He was 102 or something. And so, I think that we have to really open our minds to, we have a lot of possibilities. We're not really going to talk about stem cells today because for most people, that's a little bit out of reach, right? It's a high ticket item. It's probably $25,000 for a treatment of live stem cell and cannot, as I understand it, and you might be able to get it here in the U.S., but usually you have to travel, right? You got to go somewhere. So it's a big deal. So I think there are things that we can access, though, here that are a lot less expensive, a lot more in your budget, that can make a difference and have been studied.
And that's where I think we need to look at the idea of optimizing the aging process, right?
Yes.
Managing it, doing everything we can to really be our best and healthiest self at all of the stages of our life process, right? And for most of us, we don't really start thinking about that until you're in your 30s and 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and not, right? That's all of a sudden it becomes much more of a, you have to kind of hit that halfway point or whatever. You start thinking about this quite a bit more. When you're in your 20s, typically.
Well, you're going to live forever.
Yeah, you don't. It just seems like you have so much time. I was going to
live forever. I was I don't care about
it. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter to me. But yeah, absolutely. You do hit a stage of life where these things do matter, and you can really feel the difference because you can start to feel some of the effects of aging.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk about what we're really looking at. What is aging? And aging is it is related to, technically it's related to the aging of the cells as a shortening of something called your telomere, and it shortens and it ages the cell. And when that is gone, that tail is gone, you're gone. That's it, right? So a lot of the research is based around how do you lengthen, can you lengthen the telomere? But really, more importantly, when we look at the aging of the cell is, can you slow the reduction of it? Can you keep it stable, right? And a lot of the things that we'll talk about today, are related to the genes that kind of repair the cells and relate to that DNA tail that help that, right? That actually really help sustain that and produce energy for the cell to repair itself. So that's the cool thing, right? And even honestly, if we don't live a whole lot longer by doing these therapies, you're going to feel great.
Quality of life goes up
in the process of doing it. Yeah, you're going to feel really good. So,
absolutely.
So
I think a good way to think about it then is thinking about aging activities that speed that process up,
right.
and then anti-aging activities are things that slow that process down.
Exactly.
So when we think about things that speed up the aging process and also make us feel less than great, what are some of those things? We know these things, but let's just spell them out. Let's spell them out.
Okay. So basically, not sleeping well. People who work on at night have
disrupted sleep patterns, work patterns.
Disrupted sleep.
Yeah.
And people who work at night, I think it's well known, they do not live as long as people who work during the day. So that's interesting. Poor diet habits, right? So if you're eating fast food, it's not doing you any favors, right? Mm-hmm. Or just processed food in general. Not saying if you had it every once in a while that it's going to kill you. Definitely not, but
it's like you get that Big Mac and it's like your telomeres you can see it shrinking down. You're like, oh God, that's a year and it's 18 months off my life from every fry that I eat. So a day I lose.
That's okay. Eat it and then come in and have one of these therapies. That's what I would say. So yeah, every once in a while, but mainly, you want we'll get into what is good. The good quality diet. Smoking for sure. No smoking.
What about the Mary Jane?
It still has chemicals in it. It's still going to impact the lungs. I think it definitely is different than a manufactured cigarette. But the problem is we don't really have the studies on chronic
questions still out
Mary
there.
Jane smokers, right? It's just not there yet.
But again, like anything, we're talking about chronic habitual use versus maybe occasional use, right?
Occasional use, yeah. We know, excessive alcohol is going to be a damager, but we've seen in the studies that if you have one or two, and depending on what it is, could actually maybe be helpful, right? And healing. So, and then where you work. So we get a lot of people here that are from Boeing, and I see crazy stuff, crazy chemical levels that are in these people, and cadmium and lead exposure, and so.
If you work in manufacturing or any type of any type of work environment where you have exposure to
toxic exposure,
especially aerosolized, micro aerosol, metals or chemicals or whatever. Absolutely. That's even with safety gear can still pass that through that into getting the blood system.
It does, absolutely. So and then any other sort of heavy metal, mercury fillings or other types of things,
So then what are our anti-aging activities?
So basically going to be the opposite of that. So besides the therapies that we'll talk about, but the opposite. Yeah. So great sleep, good schedule, awesome, high quality diet, more like a Whole30 diet,
Daily hug.
A daily hug. Yeah, I like that.
It should be on the list.
Yeah, hugs are awesome.
There's some studies around hugging.
Are there?
Yeah.
Studies?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I believe there are studies around hugging.
Go join one of those
I think you should look at it.
Yeah.
It's true.
I'm a fan of
I love hugging.
Yeah. It's the best. It's I often thought I could wear one of the signs out on the street that says free hugs. So people could just bring it in here.
That's a pre-pandemic behavior now. But you could bring it
Nobody
back.
wants any free hugs anymore. I know.
That's crazy. Get away from me, you dirty disease spreader.
It's true. I'll be I promise I'll hold my breath while we're hugging.
Yeah.
And then, thinking about the opposite of okay, come in and let's get out all the heavy metals that your chemicals that you have in your body, So sweating is really, really important, for this, right? Because your skin
some kind of detox,
some kind of large
ritualized detox behavior, something you're doing on a reoccurring basis to detox. That's what exercise, sweat, run, all that kind of infrared sauna.
Infrared sauna is fantastic. Yeah. Because if we think about it, really our skin is the largest organ of elimination. That's what it's called. That's what we call it. Probably not everybody. But how do you like my large organ of elimination?
You have such a nice large organ of elimination.
Yeah, they probably don't say that to anyone.
I'm going to start trying it and see. what reaction I get.
You might. Yeah.
I don't think it'll win me
Prepared
any
for,
friends,
like,
but maybe it will. But
maybe a couple.
Will it be the friends I want to have? That's the
Probably
question.
not.
Maybe interesting people. We'll see. But yes, so sweating.
Yeah, and detoxing, and then also really reducing sugar. That's really important. Sugar is quite damaging, and we see that in diabetics, right? So when you have a diabetic who is, sugars are out of control, what happens, right? It starts damaging the arteries, the capillaries, and that's where in its advanced stages, you start seeing that, limbs are like compromised and people are getting their feet cut off because there's so much damage, to the arteries. So sugar, way less sugar. Intermittent fasting. So I know we've talked a lot about intermittent fasting over the years about like, is it the best approach? Right. And excuse me. And actually the studies are really strong on it as far as an anti-aging tool. And really it's I think not so much about the timing, it's more about the fasting, just because we spend so much energy digesting food. And so when people don't do that, your body will be like, okay, I don't have to spend all this time and energy on digestion. I can go repair some cells now, So the shorter the eating window, the better people tend to do. Now, this doesn't take into account like, anything else. Like we're not, like I say, if you're in a really good workout regimen, right? And you're like, I need to eat a lot. Obviously, you're going to have to balance that out, right? So, so with that, though, they see that in animal studies too. So a lot of that is based on when they actually have mice that they don't feed. Literally, they like have days where they don't feed them. Those mice live way longer.
Yeah, and is it some of the blue zone diet or whatever? Isn't some of that? They look at the overall caloric intake, and the caloric intake is relatively lower compared to, say, maybe non-blue zones.
Yes.
Yeah. So the idea is like you eat less, you live longer.
You eat less, you live. Yeah. And actually you have less animal protein. A lot of those blue zone people, they eat animal protein, but it's very small. Like it's tiny. In, a soup, it's like a couple small bits of meat,
right.
in the giant soup, or a little bit of fish and, all your rice and nori, things like that. So tiny amounts of animal protein. Help as well. So
some of this, we've talked a little bit about how earlier we were talking about the telomere in that cellular in terms of the cellular health, but also isn't part of our kind of anti-aging connected to our mitochondrial function as well.
Yes.
Because some of the things you're talking about here are also directly impact how the mitochondria function. And when we were talking about food, some of these foods, right, have an impact in terms of how those little energy, right? Because wasn't the mitochondria, kind of think of those as like the little energy cell.
Yeah, absolutely. They produce our energy molecules, the ATP, NAD, and they help to clean everything up, and we have a lot more higher functioning mitochondria the younger we are, and those start declining. And by the time, oh God, this is really hard to say, like that you reach your 50s, that you have way less, and so you really need to be like really helping your mitochondria, live their best life. It's really, so everything that we're talking about, that we will talk about today, including all the stuff, the lifestyle stuff. I mean, ideally, if you haven't jumped on that train by your 40s, right? I mean, you got to do it by your 50s. It's like, because that's actually when they start really seeing decline in the cells.
And that's interesting, right? Because when you look at kind of just some traditional statistics on, health, and when people's health starts to decline, it tracks directly to that, right? As people get in their 50s or 60s, that's when we see this kind of their health falls off the cliff.
Yeah.
Some of that, being connected to obviously the adding up of all the impact of a poor lifestyle and maybe poor diet, right?
Yeah.
But that's when it is a good time to, if you haven't started to shift gears and started to think more holistically about your health, that's a good time to start doing it as you get into your 40s and 50s.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when we think about some of the foods that help with mitochondria function and kind of anti-aging benefits, what are we looking at there?
So those are going to be a lot of the, we call them the sulfur-rich veggies, the ones that kind of stink, when you're making them. So your broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, all fantastic. Cabbage, onions, garlic, really any greens in general are fantastic. And then when we're thinking about looking at color, so things that are rich in antioxidants are going to be ideally, a lot of studies have been done around resveratrol, which is going to be high like in those berries, right? So all of your dark berries are going to be really beneficial. And it's interesting that those are the ones too that are appropriate for like a keto style diet where we're looking at really low sugar intake, right? So even though they have some sweetness, I mean, the sugar content is pretty low compared to bananas and apples and
mangoes,
part of it, mangoes,
papayas.
yeah. So those are all still fantastic. I mean, they still have antioxidants. It's just, I think again, it's the theme of getting the sugar down, right? So yeah, I mean, but whole foods in general, like so, we always want the
whole real foods
real
close to
food.
their original form as possible.
Exactly.
It's going to be beneficial.
Yeah.
And then, obviously we're big on, additional kind of add-ons, supplements, various other treatments. What's some of the kind of supplements maybe that we look at for anti-aging? And we can get into some of the treatments here that we use at the clinic to really boost that cellular function as well.
Yeah. So probably number one, I would say vitamin D is probably number one for, everybody, but especially us in the, Pacific Northwest, because we just don't get it. And the studies support that.
Take the vitamin D.
Just take it.
Like 10,000
is like a
10K a day
for a Northwesterner. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, or even if you live in Texas, I mean, they've studied because you just don't go outside. It's too hot. Like if you live in a blazing hot area, your D levels look pretty much like ours do. So 10,000 is usually pretty appropriate. We just got to keep an eye on that. So the nice thing about vitamin D is that, vitamin D is fantastic for the immune system. Now we think, well, how does that relate to anti-aging, right? When we look at part of our immune system is also eliminating things that should not be there, meaning like precancerous cells, right? So D is going to protect you in that way, like kill off things like if something slips through the system, right? D is going to help your immune system like track and identify and kill off, right? So, but it's also been studied, vitamin D really pushes repair. So that's the other thing. So of course we get help with bone density. We also get help with like brain function, clarity with vitamin D. But in the anti-aging realm, D really pushes repair, and yeah. So
you should just do a whole episode on vitamin D.
Vitamin D is awesome.
You're very passionate about
right.
it. You love vitamin D. You are in love with vitamin D. And so should
I'm
everyone.
Not ashamed to say
everyone
it.
should be in love with vitamin D.
Yes,
what else we got on the list?
Okay, so resveratrol. So this is interesting. So kind of coming back to those dark berries. So resveratrol is like if you saw it, it would look like kind of like that dark berry color, right? But the interesting thing is that not only is it a strong antioxidant, but I guess that's not the only thing, right? Just being an antioxidant does not make it like the best for anti-aging. It does some other things with genetics that encourage that cellular repair and the telomeres specifically. So that's how it's been researched. And it actually works with the other one we'll talk about, which is NAD. Right. So, or in the supplement form is called nicotinamide riboside, and riboside, sorry. And so they work together basically to improve your mitochondrial function. And so mitochondria work better, and it specifically has been studied to like actually push, DNA repair, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And that's why IV NAD, so intravenous IV NAD, oftentimes people have really an incredible energy response to that. And I have a good friend of mine who takes that and feels incredible on it. And so that's one that you can really feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And so last in the kind of the oral supplement, I would say is glutathione. Most people, when I test, are deficient in glutathione, actually. The precursor to it is NAC. So some people are taking NAC. It'll bump up their glutathione. Or if you eat a lot of sulfur-rich veggies, the broccolis and cauliflowers, that your glutathione will get pushed up. Whey protein does it too.
I think one of the challenges that everybody experiences for the most part is just they're under an incredible stress load, toxic environments. Nobody has a perfect diet, all this kind of stuff. So, when we think about our body's ability to naturally produce some of these, that's where it falls short oftentimes, right? So it's not surprised that people are deficient in something. And that's why, a precursor like the NAC or just direct glutathione is great. But, we're big fans of taking that glutathione up via
IV.
Yeah, IV,
baby.
IV or glute push, right? When we're as part of an IV
It's
treatment.
the best.
Yeah.
So it's fair to say, like, you and I are like enormous fans of high dose IV glutathione.
I mean, it's the secret weapon.
It is
Everybody should be on it. Who wants to win at life? If you want to lose, then don't use it.
Totally agree. It is IV glutathione. I mean, I think part of the function is that, or the benefit there is that it crosses the blood-brain barrier. And so, your brain, I mean, because it participates in what we call brain or neuroregeneration, right? It helps the cells like function better. And so it really turns on your brain. I don't know if you notice that. Like, I mean, I notice I'll get like more clarity, and things come faster. I mean, you're pretty fast anyway, but for me, like a long day, I'm slowing down. If I have some IV glutathione, like for a while, it like kicks in and I am like, I don't lose words. And
I think it gives you like multiple days of benefit.
It's incredible. Yeah. And we know from the studies that even though maybe we're just feeling like that like significant improvement over a few days, the long-term benefit of that repair that it's doing in your cells, because it's actually part of that production of energy molecules from the mitochondria. So that's part of it. It's actually assisting with that. And just the, just incredible antioxidant activity on that one.
What about ozone, IV ozone?
Yeah, so IV ozone.
That's another one you're a big fan of.
I'm a huge fan. And that one also has been studied directly to lengthen telomeres, which is pretty fascinating. So I'll explain what that is. It's a form of oxygen therapy, which probably sounds a little strange, right? Doing that IV.
So the way it works, because we just started to experiment with this. I have personally just started to experiment with it. So it's interesting because you draw a bunch of your blood out.
Yes.
Okay. So you pull your blood out.
Yes.
And then it gets mixed. Then the ozone and the blood go into like an IV bag.
Yes.
And
correct.
You mix it all up.
Yeah. Very gently.
Yeah. You give it like a gentle massage. Ozone massaging the blood and a little shaking. And then you put the blood back into your body.
You do.
You put your own blood with the ozone back into your body.
So it's ozonated blood.
Yes. Ozonated blood.
Yeah, I know. And that's usually the part that freaks people out.
The blood goes out and it comes back in with ozone.
So most people, when most people think of ozone, they think of the ozone layer, right? And so this is not the same thing. Ozone layer on the Earth is combined with smog elements and toxins, things like that.
This is pure.
This is pure oxygen.
Pure oxygen.
Pure oxygen. And so so there are studies actually that have been done direct IV ozone. We do not do that here. So you can just take the gas directly because it's pure oxygen. We will not do that here. Most places are like in Europe that do that. Most US, aren't willing to do that.
Interesting.
And that's how they went. When they treated Ebola in Nigeria, there were a group of docs that went and did that. They used direct because it was really difficult to carry all these IV bags with them, So they just took the gas, directly infused it, and they had like an 88% cure rate. It was crazy of Ebola. And that's a published study that you can find. So benefits there for infection treatment, or if you happen to catch, a smidge of Ebola, actually don't come here.
Don't leave your house.
Yeah, right.
Keep that contained. Yeah. Good luck.
But yes, we take some blood out. It goes into a bag of sterile saline. There's a little bit of blood thinner in there, so there's no clotting risk. And then you take that oxygen and you put it in the bag, and it immediately goes into the cells. And so you get a combination back of O3 and O2. So you get a super hyper oxygenated blood. And so, yes.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. I want to do it where I have that hooked up on one side, like on the left side.
We've talked about this.
And on the right side, I want like a super juiced up IV bag, like a Super Myers, and the glutathione.
I will do that only if...
We got to get pictures of it.
We get pictures, and then we have to record you like right after of like all the
lifting a giant boulder up or something, like picking a car up,
moving the treadmill. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, let's do it. If you guys don't know, like I tend to experiment on Barry with his permission, of course, always
willing participant, mad scientist. We're trying to
I wonder what
recreate
this dose will do.
We're trying to recreate the super
Yes.
soldier serum basically from the Marvel universe. Like, well, we asked the question, well, what if Captain America, what if that could be real? What if we could make a super soldier serum? That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, so we'll let you guys know.
Yeah.
We'll let you know what happens. So ozone, I mean, again, we see DNA repair, and so it's used for a whole host of conditions.
Yeah, and for the most part, I mean, when we're looking at this with patients here at the clinic, a lot of people don't come in necessarily and say, I want to stop aging. You know, like
never.
that's not usually
Yeah,
people don't. I mean, we
usually,
might all think
yeah.
about that. Did you even know you could wake up and say, hey, I'm going to go find somebody to help me stop the aging process or slow down? You can. We're here. We can help you do this.
Yeah.
Slow it down, but and optimize the aging process, right? That's really what we're talking about.
Yeah.
How do we age with power, with grace, really supporting our body so that we
Yes.
have a high quality of life.
Yes.
But typically, we're going to employ or deploy these tactics, a variety of them, depending on the individual patient, and oftentimes servicing other issues that they're having, right? That then has the spillover benefit in terms of their overall energy and their wellness, and then of course their aging process as well.
Absolutely, yeah. They're going to get that like side benefit. You're absolutely right. People are seeing us for like when I think about typically when I'm doing an IV NAD, which we'll touch base on in a sec, but people are coming in with like long-term chronic fatigue that isn't budging, right? So we're like, okay, what do we have to do? Of course, we check all the underlying things, your thyroid, et cetera, et cetera. But do we have something as a powerhouse to really shift and move this person, right? I mean, I always love too, if we can get somebody who is already in a great place, and then can we push them, as we've talked about, can you push them to be amazing? Like, and just, as we're saying, like everything is optimized. Like, my energy is awesome. My workouts are awesome,
Yeah, I mean, for many people, we're trying to get back to a baseline of wellness, right?
Yeah.
Where we want to get to a spot where we're just feeling better, or we're feeling normal, or we have some kind of, issue that we're trying to resolve, but then on the flip side of that, when we get to that spot of back to a baseline of wellness, then it's really interesting to look at, okay, cool, how really, what's the top side? How good can we really feel? How much energy can we really have? And we find that there's a huge top side.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting is that I can't tell you how many times people come in and they go, I feel horrible, I have no energy, but I'm 47 and like that's normal, right? Because you're not supposed to have any energy like once you get into your 40s, 50s, 60s. And I'm like, no, that's not normal. You should actually feel good every single day, except if maybe you lose sleep or something like that, or you're
we're gonna
sick,
exactly.
Yeah.
Occasional bad days. Whatever.
Oh yeah, totally. Everybody has that, but on the whole, on the average, I mean, every day should feel good. That's normal.
So one more tool you wanted to talk about briefly was the IV NAD, real quick.
Correct. Yeah. So IV NAD is so it's nicotinamide, and it is basically just it's a pure energy molecule. I mean, that's what it is. It is a version. It's a form of vitamin B3, and so it does not behave like niacin. Some people will go, "Oh no, niacin," because niacin itself is used for lowering cholesterol. A lot of cardiologists use it for that purpose, and it makes people flush like really badly. And NAD, IV NAD does not do that. It can make you feel stimulated while you're having it, and that's the whole purpose. And it does take a few. So I do want to kind of just put out there that, sometimes people can have one treatment, and I'm talking about IV specifically, and they feel good, they feel good. But ideally, what we're doing is we have a series of these that we're doing, along with at least identifying some core key changes in the lifestyle as well. I mean, that's really how we're gonna get things dialed in.
Yeah, typically it all goes hand in hand with some lifestyle changes, and that's this approach, right? And the approach is there isn't necessarily a magic pill, right? And sometimes we get really excited when we're talking about these treatments because they are incredible,
right?
And yet at the same time, in order for a person to really experience that benefit, they often are part of kind of an overall plan or a holistic kind of change or a series of small changes. Sometimes there's just small tweaks that a person needs to do in really order to tap into and utilize and capitalize on the benefits from the treatment.
Right, exactly.
I like to think about too. I mean, I've been doing some infrared sauna recently, and it's like if you do one infrared sauna once in a while, like anything, there's not going to be a tremendous amount of benefit from that, right? But if you're doing it 2-3 times a week and you do that for a couple months, I mean, then you really start to experience the upside.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, even one sauna is completely
it does feel
nice.
Nice.
Awesome. But you're right. Like when you look at the studies,
like the detoxing benefits, and like you read all the
benefits,
you read the list of all the benefits. All that stuff comes with repeated regular use, right? And the same with IV therapy, whether that's just straight nutrient IV therapy here or a specific type like the NAD or the glutathione. Really, the ultimate benefit comes when it's part of a regular and periodic either maintenance plan or treatment plan to get you to a spot where you feel really exceptional, and that can be used to keep you there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I would encourage you, listening that let's have a conversation, like if you're not where you want to be, or if you're really just wanting to optimize your life, your lifestyle, come in and let's dive into kind of what your particular situation is and, what option would be best for you.
Absolutely. Let's unlock your anti-aging code.
There you go.
And optimize.
That could be a book. It probably is a book.
It should be a book if it's not a book. It's a really good book title. We have a copyright on that. Don't try to take that book title. We might use that. All right. Well, this was awesome. It's really exciting. And again, like always, if this is something that's intriguing or there's a particular therapy that we mentioned and your existing patient, talk to us about it and bring it up.
Absolutely.
And if you're listening to this and you think, ooh, does this apply to me and you haven't been in, come in and see us. We'd love to put together that plan for you.
Would love to.
Absolutely. All right. Until the next time.
Okay.
Remember, elevate and thrive.